Hi everyone, I myself Asim Rafiq from Pakistan, PhD scholar at Faculty of Management and Administrative Sciences, University of Karachi. The topic of my presentation is macroeconomic determinant and the interdependence of the stock markets. Evidence from emerging economies. The sequence of the presentation is introduction to the research paper, hypothesis, research methodology, result and data analysis, and conclusion. Now first I would like to introduce the purpose statement in this introduction section. First is to examine the long-term interdependence between China and 10 emerging economies, including Pakistan, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, India, Hungary, Mexico, Russia, South Africa, and Brazil, using Johansson co-integration technique. Second is to measure the time-varying interdependence between China and other emerging economies, using DCC-Garch model. Third is to examine the impact of macroeconomic determinants on the stock markets, conditional correlations using panel regression. Research problem. First is the issue in the earlier studies is that the most of the studies simply consider the world major developed and mature equity markets, and the benchmark stock market is US. Second, the issue is that the interdependence between the stock markets is not constant over the time, means it is time varying phenomena, time varying behavior. Third issue is that although the recent state of financial literature shed light on the increased understanding on the interdependence of the stock markets, but much less has been said what are the determinants of the stock market interdependence. Now the research questions. To achieve the aim of the study, we have developed following three questions as stated below. Is there a long-run interdependence between the stock markets of emerging economies and China? Second, is interdependence between the stock markets of emerging economies and China time varying? Third, what are the significant macroeconomic determinants of the stock market interdependence between emerging economies and China? Hypothesis. HO1, there is no long-run relationship between emerging and Chinese stock markets. HO2, the relationship between emerging and Chinese stock markets has not been changing over the time. HO3, there is no significant impact of macroeconomic determinants on the stock market correlations between China and emerging economies. Data and methodology. Source of the data collection are Yahoo Finance, International Monetary Fund, and International Financial Statistics websites. To address the issue of this paper, first we use Johansson co-integration is used to examine the long-run static interdependence, and we use DCC-Garch model to assess the long-run time-varying interdependence. Following are the representative index of each country. KAC 100 index represents Pakistan, S&P BSE India, SSE Composite China, JSKE Indonesia, FTSE Busra Malaysia, KLCI Malaysia, PSEI Philippines, BVSP Brazil, BUX Hungary, MMX Mexico, MISEX Russia, and FTSEJ/JSE South Africa. Further, to study the impact of macroeconomic determinant on the stock market interdependence, we run a panel regression model. Variables for the panel model are differential of bilateral trade, inflation, interest rate, industrial production, and exchange rates. Now, results of the study. To measure long-run static interdependence, we run Johansson co-integration. Based on the results reported in the table 1, as we can see in table 1, till at most 4, we can reject the null hypothesis of no integration in both type of test, trace and max eigenvalue. After that, we cannot reject the null hypothesis of no long-run correlation or co-integration. In order to measure the time-varying interdependence, we use a DCC-Garch model. Based on the results reported in the table 2, we cannot reject the null hypothesis of no co-integration as stated below. This co-integration means relationship over the time, dynamic relationship, time-varying relationship. As we can see in the table 2, that the correlation all are significant at all levels except Brazil, which has higher negative significant correlation with Chinese stock markets. The result calculated correlations in table 2 support that China has the higher positive significant correlation with Pakistan, India, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Hungary, Mexico, Russia, and South Africa. As we already mentioned that, however, Brazil is an exception with higher negative significant correlation with China stock market. Now we would discuss the results of the panel regression model reported in the table 3. Show that macroeconomic determinants have no significant effect on the stock market's correlation between China and its companion emerging economies. As we can see in the table 3, none of the variable is statistically significant as shown by the p-value. So, on the basis of this result, we cannot reject the null hypothesis of there is no significant impact of macroeconomic determinants on the stock market's correlations between China and emerging economies. Finally, I would like to present the conclusion of this presentation in 3 points. It is concluded that there is long-run interdependence between the Chinese and the other 10 emerging economies. Further, this interdependence is also dynamic over the time, means it is varying over the time. However, there is no significant impact of the macroeconomic determinants on the stock market correlations between Chinese and other emerging economies. Thank you so much. If you have any question, you can consult on my email address asim_r83@hotmail.com. Again, thank you so much for this presentation.